With World War Z changing pace and sides seemingly on its own leisure, the humans were being pushed back on all fronts again. Brazil was being pushed back, as Rwanda and Oman functioned as a buffer zone to keep the flanking zombies at bay. The zombies were still deep into Belarus's territory. The front of the zombies and the border of military Myanmar were getting awfully close. Leader Tan Sui said that though they might not have China's numbers, their soldiers had twice the courage and discipline. As Turkey's troops were being pushed westward, it might not take long before Bulgaria would be thrown into the war again. Boyko Borisov said that his country had continued the military path for the past years and were prepared for an invasion from the south like before. The damage caused by the Tohoku earthquake was so much that the Japanese still had their main forces back in their homeland. For the foreseeable future, they mostly would sit out major confrontations with the undead. At the Russian front, the zombies were once again getting dangerously close to the coast to where they could cut off the troops on two different sides. As Brazil continued to lose ground to the zombies, Leader Cardoso set forth a new training in land doctrines. He said that clearly the old ways were not working, and that hopefully, with these newly instated doctrines, the zombies would be effectively countered. Halfway through November, a Canadian division forwarded a transmission that they could no longer hold the forest area and that the predicted divide would occur within the next month if nothing changed. As most of the zombies in Europe were pushing into the Ukraine and Belarus, a large army of human troops from multiple countries managed to get bypassed and hoped to close the gap to flank the zombies from the rear. And then in December, the divide indeed happened as the armies were being forced west and east due to the water. The attempted flanking maneuver by the bypassed soldiers had failed miserably, as they lost their foothold in less than a month. Though China had lost almost all its territory of former India, the zombies seemed to ignore the south, giving the troops still stationed there the chance to counterattack when opportunity would present itself. The bulk of the horde still headed east, towards military Myanmar and deeper into China itself. In the first week of 2012, Belarus confirmed that they were able to push the zombies back to their original border, as it seemed that on some parts of the front line the pace seemed to change again. Even the feared divide was countered, as several divisions were able to break through and force the zombies away from the shoreline. Brazil at the same time was still unable to win some ground back, but the pacing was not as threatening as elsewhere in Europe and especially Asia. A few zombies now moved southward, deeper into the territory of former India, complicating the retaking for the stationed Chinese soldiers. America once again focused on the election. Obama, who promised the people that he would put an end to the zombie uprising, was not able to fulfill his promise, and some people believed he did not achieve all that much while he was in office. But in the years of Obama, the line did shift to a point where it made a difference which could help Obama through the elections this time to get re-elected, as many felt that Mitt Romney would not do much better. And then at the end of January, a new country was hit at its homeland. Romania yelled for a call to arms as its soldiers needed to defend their country. Leader Emil Constantinescu said his army had prepared in the last half year, and though it might not be enough to face the entire horde, he hoped it would suffice to deal with the flanking zombies along the Romanian line. As Brazil kept on losing territory and was forced westward, Oman saw an opportunity to flank and take former Brazilian-owned territories for themselves. In the first months of fighting, Romania did very poorly, even with the help of Canadian and British troops. In the first week of March, the zombie horde got even closer to military Myanmar, but they had for the moment an alarming low number of soldiers at their border. A few months back, North Korean leader Kim Jong-il had passed away, meaning that now his son, Kim Jong-un, was responsible for the country. One of his first decisions was to increase North Korea's research and science capabilities to hopefully come up with better ways of fighting the zombie. Though the battles in Romania were not in the favor of the humans, a large chunk of the undead had been cut off as the Canadians managed to retake the borderline. The European front was all over the place. As it moved to Asia, it dented southward and upward again, implying a tug-of-war rebound might soon occur once more. And then at the end of May 2012, the battles in military Myanmar started, mostly fought by American and Canadian troops at first. In Romania, the zombies once again managed to head led inward, this time not in a spearheading maneuver, but more spread out. The front at Belarus had shifted eastward, deeper into Russia once more. Though the people felt the tide turning again in that area, Romania was still considered a danger zone, especially as the zombies had reached the northern regions of Bulgaria. The Bulgarians did not have that many units stationed around that zone, as they expected the zombies to come from Turkey's angle. Military Myanmar was now finally able to fight back by using a sneaky maneuver. They claimed land that was previously reclaimed by the Chinese. Romania was growing desperate. They were losing at all sides, even giving the zombies the ability to attack the Ukraine from a southern flanking position. The Bulgarians were able, for the moment, to close the gap and force the undead away from their border slightly. Romania had lost more than half of its territory already, and with the zombies biting into the Ukrainian once more from the south, the whole eastern front line of the Ukraine and Belarus was faltering again. France's recently elected President François Hollande set forth a naval production. If the zombies managed to fight their way through Europe, France would evacuate most of its political and military high-ranking personnel to Canada. The larger groups of the zombies headed southward, as they could sense they were able to push deeper towards Europe's core. Many countries had layers after layers of troops at the ready to function as a buffer when the undead would try to break through. As Bulgaria had prepared their troops at the wrong side, the zombies managed to spearhead their way southward. Though Bulgaria was far from capitulating, it did create an opening for the undead to attack the Greek soldiers once more on their home turf. But as 2012 drew to a close and America had once more re-elected Obama, Europe's outer ring seemed to waver. But then, just as before, the zombies stopped their advance and were called back, giving the humans the chance to strengthen their front to give them some leadway. The reason for this recurring anomaly was still unknown to the human scientists. The absence of the zombies did not take as long as last time, as in the first days of 2013, the undead had been sighted again all along the border. But in the meantime, military Myanmar and China were able to retake much of their stolen land. Armor development over the past years had increased dramatically, hopefully giving the humans a better edge at dominating the pace of the battles. It would not be until 2018 before a new prototype of tank would be ushered in. The death toll of the zombies stood at 140 million, with many more roaming the fields. They walked throughout a bombed-out, hellish wasteland where life went extinct and mutations due to the radiation started to occur. The European front was right back where it started, and the same counted for the line headed towards Finland. A zombie stalemate was upon the world. The tug-of-war effect resulted in no side bleeding out, but losses were felt all over. If it would depend on technology, it would mean that the war would still be going on for at least 4 to 5 years before a breakthrough could be made. Oman, just like Brazil before that, was not able to hold the front line, meaning they were being pushed back deeper into their own territory. As their troops retreated, the Chinese troops advanced, coherent with the tug-of-war fashion. The few leftovers by Brazil were being attacked as well, not able to fend for themselves that effectively. And for months onward, the same pacing was kept, except in China, where the advancement by the southern soldiers was countered to where they almost lost all of the territory they held. In the third month of 2014, the soldiers in Oman were able to pick up the pace and determine some victories for their side, as did, surprisingly, Rwanda. Over half of former India had been reclaimed by the Chinese, mostly due to Russian troops attacking from the northeast. The soil had been poisoned by so much war, death, and disease that life in these parts was unthinkable for the foreseeable future. Mongolia had its shackles unchained as the zombies were being forced west again, except for a few pockets here and there that by now had proven to be no particular threat. China recently had elected a new leader. Xi Jinping promised he would do things drastically different compared to Hu Jintao. Jinping had lost his faith in the GDA, mentioning he was planning to form an independent faction, where China was free to do her experiments and research without any restrictions labeled by the overseeing governing GDA. Battles went on slow and sluggish. The Ukraine lost on multiple sides again, but not to an alarming point where neighboring countries needed to be warned. As in Asia, pockets of undead were routed, cornered, and efficiently eliminated. People were not even talking about the feared divide anymore, as the GDA could dominate the pace at multiple sides even if the zombies had cut them off at the water. Europe was littered with defensive bunkers and checkpoints everywhere. It reconfirmed the notion that the zombies would not have the strength to take over the continent, but raised the fear all the more what would happen if the stalemate would continue. Where Rwanda failed its pushing attempt, Oman succeeded into moving east towards the incoming Russian units. They were still far apart, and this maneuver had already been tried multiple times, and almost always had failed. The tiresome war lumbered on, with the zombies not really posing a threat to world domination, but also no effective way of ridding humanity of them for a while. Governments were afraid that with the millennials, zombie sympathizers might arise, but it was still too soon to determine that.